Imagine that you went to sleep and the next morning you woke up and you still realize it's night, and after 10 hours you still realize that there's no daylight, it's still night. What would life look like if all the planets stopped circling around the sun? Firstly, let's talk about all the planets. I mean, if Venus doesn't circle around sun, Mercury doesn't, Jupiter doesn't, Mars doesn't, or Saturn doesn't, it's not going to be a big deal because there is no life on those planets. But there's going to be a lot of problem on the planet Earth if the Earth stops orbiting around the sun. So let's talk about what's going to happen on the Earth. On the other planet doesn't really matter. I mean, it's pretty clear. If the Earth stops circling around the sun, then one side of the Earth is always going to have daylight and the other side is always going to be night. I mean, just imagine a place, if you lived in China, then what's going to happen is all you're going to see is daylight. You're not going to see any night. It's all going to be daylight. And if you're on the other side, like California, what's going to happen is you're never going to be able to see daylight. It's all going to be night. Like, imagine you waking up, it's still night. You're going to sleep, it's still night. I mean, life would be so much hard if the Earth stops moving around the sun. Would time still be an issue if the Earth stops orbiting around the sun? Would you be counting days? Because how would you count days if you never saw day and night? Because a combine of a day and night equals 1 day, but you would never be able to see one or the other thing. So would you be counting days? I mean, you might be counting time, like you might be saying, oh, it's 1 hour, 2 hours, but how would you count days? Wouldn't it be really hard for you to count days? That's one thing that people would really think about. Like, if there was no daylight on one side of the Earth, then you couldn't count how many nights or how many time it has been. So that would be really difficult. Counting days might be really hard. Like, people would never count days, month, or year. Can human really live like that? Can international companies around the world still continue to have the strong economy if one side of the Earth never saw daylight and the other side of the Earth never saw night? I mean, we might say, you know what, if China gets daylight, then yeah, it'll still continue and it might increase the economy that it's all daylight, so you can work 24 hours as much as you want. But if you talk about some economy situation in the United States, wouldn't that be a problem? Because at night, people have to handle themselves to work the entire night. I mean, usually if you see night, you feel like sleeping. So that would be really hard. Like, looking at all the other things, the other side of it, it would be really interesting to see what would happen. I mean, overall, if you think one thing that would increase and that would be good, that people would travel to the other side, not to see good things, but to see daylight. And the other people would travel to the United States to see night. So that would be adding one more realistic thing on your traveling. I mean, imagine you want to see daylight and you're like, oh, I should go to China, India, or Nepal to see daylight. And you would travel there. And people from China, India would feel like, you know what, I want to see night. I want to see night. I want to see those lights and all those things. That they're going to travel to the United States just to see night. I mean, traveling would be so much interesting. I think traveling might increase based on this thing. As we see, it's going to be, people are going to be dying to see daylight. And other people are going to be dying to see the night. Like, to see the sky black. That would be so much amazing to see what would happen. If you look at it from this point of view, that sun would probably burn the side of the Earth that it's going to. Because if you look at it, a constant heat on one side of the Earth might burn that side. Like, life would decrease. The temperature might go up to maybe like 200 degrees Fahrenheit. That would be so much hard for people to live. I'm not saying it's going to happen within a month, 2 or the, but if it's constantly for 6 months, there's all the sunlight is going to that side of the Earth, it would be really hard. Like, it would probably burn the whole side of the Earth, and the other side might get frozen. Like, it might get real cold. So that would be interesting to see what would really happen in that case. I mean, we all know it's not going to happen, and if it does, it's definitely going to decrease the amount of life. Like, it's going to take away a lot of lives. So it'll be really interesting to see what would happen. But this is if that really happens. So that should be all for today, guys. We talked about a really interesting topic. If all the planets, especially the Earth, stops moving around the sun, what would happen? See you guys with another video. of imagine that.